Welcome to the Land Your Bet Sports Betting Show. Late night here on Wednesday night after all these games are finished in the NBA. We went 2-3, but went actually right 0.0 units up and down on this one because we portioned our units correctly here. Went 1.2 units on Zubac to get his points and rebounds, which he did in the third quarter. We'll go over all that stuff in tomorrow's video, which will be coming out at 3 p.m. Eastern, as it does every day. This video is looking at deep dives and projections for tomorrow's slate, as we're still waiting on player props and a few of these lines to settle down here. But I'm getting ahead of some early sides for you and a couple of leans on the player props that I'll be looking at tomorrow. So let's take a quick look at what we have on Thursday. We're going to have 9 games, and the back-to-backs that we're looking at here, a couple on the back end, as Cleveland is now playing Brooklyn after playing the Spurs. Detroit just played a really, really good game against the Kings and is now taking on Portland at Portland. And Golden State is at Indy after wiping the floor with the 76ers. And the Spurs are also on a back-to-back after their game with Cleveland. They're playing at Orlando. The front end here is some important stuff because Denver's at the Lakers, and then they're at Sacramento. The Lakers are playing at Denver, and then the Pellies. And most importantly here, the Bucks are playing at versus Minnesota at home, and then they're versus Charlotte at home as well. I don't know why they would try very hard in that Charlotte game, so expect them to go all out as in this Minnesota game. Guys like Dame Lillard, who are questionable, I would expect to play. Go ahead and rest the next night when you play the G League level Charlotte Hornets and go from there, right? So let's just get right into the first game I'm looking at here, and it is the Dubs and the Pacers. And it's interesting to me because the Dubs are coming off of this really nice win against the 76ers in Philly, putting up 127 points and really getting to play all of their backups by the time the fourth quarter came around. Jonathan Kuminga, the only guy that touched 29 minutes. Clay played 28 from the starting unit for the Dubs. Then Steph played 24. Draymond played 18. He was actually questionable in that game before it started, and then ended up playing and wasn't needed past the third quarter. So he only played 18 minutes. They don't have their injury report submitted yet due to Warriors, but like I said, I think you can expect most of these dudes to go because they didn't really get a very large portion of minutes here on Wednesday night. For the Pacers, it's kind of the same old story, but if you were watching the video about the Tuesday slate when the Pacers beat the Rockets, I took Tyrese Halliburton over 5.5 assists. We got that at really good money on MGM, and he did that very nicely for us in the third quarter as well. And it was a situation where he was questionable like he had been, but we all knew he was going to play. He was just going to be on a minutes restriction. However, I also said that if you dug a little deeper, there was some frustration that was boiling over amongst the players, and it was being talked about in local Indiana Pacers media, which you only know if you're a sicko and you follow along with as much local media about basketball as you can so that you get info like that, and then you use it to bet on Tyrese Halliburton to go over instead of under, because the minutes restriction I didn't think was going to be something that they held to, even though there was no actual reports from the coaches or anybody that they were going to take away that minutes restriction from Tyrese. Kind of seemed like it might happen. Lo and behold, he played 29 minutes in that game. They won because he was in the fourth quarter for 8.5 minutes in the fourth quarter, which he wasn't doing prior to that. I think you see the same thing here. I don't think he's really going to be sitting too often anymore, unless maybe they have a weird back-to-back situation. But I think he is going to be, when I say sitting, like not playing at least 28-ish minutes, right? Like he's normally playing as many as he needs into the mid 30s when needed. But in this situation, I think his cap is probably 30 minutes, but at least it's 30 and not 22, and you can bank on that. So they are -6 in this one. And just a couple of the key stats that I have for it and what I'm looking at in this game. Golden State is playing their 5th game in 7 nights. Their starters last night, though, only played an average of 24 minutes. Like I said, that's just on Wednesday night. And they're coming off that blowout win. Then I look at their no-rest stuff, and their no-rest stuff is actually really interesting because Steph is going crazy on no-rest. 33 points a game, 36 minutes per game, 23 field goal attempts, shooting 50 and 38, those percentages from the field and from three-point. So it does seem like he sort of takes the team on his back, on offense especially, when they are on these back-to-backs and just sort of takes over. But the interesting thing is that the Warriors are actually really good on the back-to-backs here. You look at their numbers with no rest, they score a $122.5 on those in those games, which have now they're 5-4 in those games. So they played 9 of them where they're on no rest in these games, and on the season they're averaging 118.9 points per game. So a slight uptick in the games where they have no rest. The points per game allowed is down at 117.8 versus 118 on the season that they're allowing overall. Basically the same numbers, but pretty good, interestingly enough. And they playing a bit slower when they play on no rest, but their offensive rating goes up. That's why you still see them scoring more points than they do when they play with a faster pace like they normally do for the majority of the season. The Pacers, I'm looking at them in the last 10 here, and I'm looking at their home road splits as opposed to the no rest situation, because they obviously have a couple nice rest. But on the season, in the last 10, at home 124 points per game versus 113.5 on the road, starting to become a thing for them since the trade, that they are much better, or at least their games rather go much higher. They're still about a 500 team in that time frame, as you can see by the fact that they give up slightly less, just 1 point less than they score. And then on the road, it's the exact same for the amount that they score and the amount that they allow. The pace at home, though, is the 102.1. That's why you see this total up at 250.5, which is bananas. But it is something that you would consider when you see how well the Dubs play on offense and how the Pacers, how fast they're playing. So I'm not really ballsy enough to take an under. 250.5 seems crazy for a Dubs team that has been playing better defense over the last 5 overall. Where regardless of venue, they are playing at about 110 defensive rating and about 116, 117 offensive rating. So it's actually slightly down for their offensive rating is, but their defensive rating has gone up. So however much you want to buy into that, I don't know if you want to use those recent numbers for the Dubs where they've played better D in this scenario where they're playing at Indiana, ton of points for Indy at home. Does seem like the over is a better play there, but my bet actually in this one is I'm taking an early +7 on the Dubs because I think that's too big. I think they are playing really well. I don't know that they've found it to turn it around, but I think that they can hang with this Pacers team in terms of scoring because of how bad the Pacers are guarding down low. The Warriors are defending the paint really well. They need to defend the 3-point line a lot better, and they've fluctuated a ton with that over the course of the whole season. But like I said, they've been much better in the last 5. And if you believe in that, then they should have at least enough in their arsenal on offense that with the amount that they can slow down this team on defense enough, then they should be able to keep and hang with them. And in this game is for sure in the 240s, I think, no matter what. But I think the Dubs can hang in a 240 point total. So I'll take them at +7 because I mean, this might keep rising. If you see it at like 8, 8.5, whatever, fine. I mean, obviously, I'm going to like it at 8, 8.5 if I like it at 7. And if you don't want to ride with one of these sides, I get it too. But this is getting too big of a spread for a Dubs team that I don't think is that much worse than this Pacers squad in its current iteration, as it still continues to figure things out a bit on offense with Halliburton and Pascal and company. All right, next game is this Knicks and Mavs game. Did another deep dive into this one. That's kind of why this is coming out so late. And as I'm taking a quick pause, quick reminder to subscribe to the page if you do like what you're getting. We've won a ton of money as of late, up about 14 units in the last 10 days. So if that works for you, continue to subscribe to the page. Check out this video that comes out the night before with projections for as many of these games as I can get into and leans. When I do have best bets like this one I just made for the Dubs, you get that as well. And then we go into the video that comes out at 3 p.m. Eastern on the day of games with the full slate of picks that I'm making for that day. All right, the injury report here is what's key for this Knicks and Mavericks game. That's why I had to talk about it no matter what. The reserves are running thin here for the Knicks. Jalen Brunson is questionable. I don't think he's going to play, but as someone smarter than me who I was speaking to earlier on text said, I don't trust Tibbs. Jalen Brunson could be doubtful to play, and then all of a sudden he's got 40 minutes under his belt in the fourth quarter, and he's playing even though they're down 20. That's a Tibbs thing to do. So we don't know for sure, but I would lean towards not playing because there was fear that Jalen was going to be out for weeks and with the injury that he just recently sustained. And now Tibbs is saying, well, it's only going to be days, but that still seems like he should be playing in this one. OG, we know, is out. Julius Randle's out. Quentin Grimes is out. And Mitchell Robinson is out. For the Mavs, don't take Derek Lively lightly. His absence is a big deal. I didn't mean to do that, I swear. But his absence is a big deal. He's the rim runner for this team. He's the only really down low presence that can hang with guys that are big, like an Isaiah Hartenstein. So he's going to be crucial. His absence, rather, is going to be noticeable in this one. I don't know that, and especially if Maxi Kleber doesn't play. Now we're talking about a lot of Dwight Powell and hoping that Grant Williams can box out, a guy like Hartenstein, who has been an absolute monster on the boards. Dante Exum continues to fight off issues as well with his injury, and Maxi Kleber, like I said, is questionable in this one. Also been fighting injuries for the whole season. The interesting thing is the line movement here, which has moved towards the Mavericks considerably. It's at -3. It might even be close to -3.5 at this point because you see that +4 for the Knicks hanging there. And it's just steadily moving because I don't think most people who are looking at this expect Jalen Brunson to play. And without Jalen Brunson and the rest of that squad that you see missing there, that's a big deal. The total has also gone moved down, rather. It was at 234.5. Now it's at 230.5. That's what it opened at. So it's moved down considerably as well, because who the hell is going to score for the Knicks if Jalen Brunson isn't out there to at least like garner most of the attention of the defense so other guys can catch and shoot like Dante DiVincenzo and company, right? Like Dante DiVincenzo, even though he's been going off on points, most of it is catch and shoot, or at least catch. And if the defense runs out and takes away the three, then he is good enough to drive. But all of his stuff is predicated on Jalen Brunson controlling the game and the offense and the defense in a way that he shifts the imbalance of the defense. And then guys like Dante DiVincenzo and even Josh Hart are wide open for shots. But these dudes can't create their own shot in an offense that doesn't have a guy like Jalen Brunson. So that is going to be a huge problem for that Knicks offense. And that is why I'm definitely leaning strongly into the Mavs. In fact, that is my next bet here that I'll show you. But I do want to say one of the main reasons, and shout out Kyle Kerms, who, if you've hopefully seen, I've been on his live stream. He's got an awesome YouTube channel, the Kyle Kerms on the SOAS network. So check that out as well. He sent me this and I'm super grateful because it makes a ton of sense. The Knicks, basically since OG has been out, the last 7 games, their opponent 3-point percentage has skyrocketed. They no longer are guarding the 3-point line nearly as well. And the Mavs, well, we know what they do. These numbers are for the whole season for their 3-pointers, because all they do is shoot threes. They take the second most after only the Celtics. They make the second most after only the Celtics. Their opponent 3-pointers made has gone up, and a lot of them have been coming from the corner, which is a place that Dallas loves to shoot. They have the most corner threes that they shoot and make every game on the season. And they love to get the ball out there. Obviously, Luka penetrates down the middle usually. Yes, I heard myself say that. And then he's able to kick to the corners, there's always a guy in a corner, the opposite corner for him, or on the same side wing. So that's how they set things up. And then they obviously have a guy in the dunker spot. And then Luka just drives into the lane and is a superhuman robot that can make decisions on the fly as well as anyone we've ever seen in the league. And a lot of those decisions end up with him no looking into the corner and guys getting wide open. That's why they shoot about 12.5 corner threes. That's a lot, by the way. To get the ball into the corner 12 times to pull a three is a lot in the NBA, especially with an emphasis on defending it, which the Knicks have not been good at since they lost OG. And now they continue to lose defenders, like we said. So the isolation defense might be another problem here for them. I expect the Knicks to get better at ISO defense, but on the season, they're not very good. They give up roughly the 10th most points per possession on ISO when they have to play an ISO defense. But especially as of late, without OG and company, and even Julius Randle and even Mitchell Robinson, much better one-on-one defender than Isaiah Hartenstein is. They're close to equal in rebounding, but not in terms of one-on-one defense. So the ISO defense without all these guys for the Knicks is going to be a problem. That's what this team does. We know with Luka and Kyrie, it's all about ISO ball, and then them being able to have the decision to either score or pass, right? And so that's why my next bet here is Dallas -3, because I expect that to keep rising. And so hopefully you see this in time to get it before it's at like 6, but I would play this up to about -4.5, -5, and then I'd get a bit nervous by it. But I'm still comfortable betting this at -4.5, -5. Like I said, once it gets over 5, now you start treading into some somewhat dangerous territory. But if Jalen Brunson doesn't play, or even if he does, this is a good, decent spread. If he doesn't play, this is a wonderful spread that we're getting a ton of closing line value. If you ever hear me say CLV or closing line value, what I mean is this number is at -3. In fact, it opened at -1.5. If you took it at -1.5 and bet the Mavs that point, this line's going to close at a much worse number than -1.5 if you're taking the Mavs, right? It's going to end probably at -5.5, -6 before this game tips off if Jalen Brunson is not in. In fact, if Jalen Brunson is officially declared out, this will probably rise to even further, maybe -7 and -8 even is where I would cap this at by that point. So that means if you took it at -3, you get great value compared to what the number closed at. That's why it's called closing line value. So that's what we're picking up here with this -3 if we take it for the Mavs. And the last game I'm looking at here is another interesting one, and this is just for tonight. I'm going to be looking at a few more games because I'll have player props from other games. There's 9 of them tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern, which every single day that video with the final picks are coming out at that time. So let's look at the key matchup for the Jazz and the Suns. Jazz are +6.5, Suns -6.5, and it's at 243.5 total because the Suns are very good at offense. The Jazz are good at offense, terrible at defense, and especially on the road, they're terrible at defense. So let's talk about that for a second, and let's talk about what these teams kind of don't do well and do well. The Jazz right here in their last 10 stats for both these teams. Second in paint points. This is what they are all season. They're 4th on the season. Suns giving up the basically 11th most opponent points in the paint there. The Jazz second chance points. This is what's crazy to me. second and second chance points, meaning off of offensive rebounds, they're getting the second most points off of their offensive rebounds. And the Suns on the season are bad at limiting second chance points, but they're worst in the league over their last 10, tied with the Wizards, who we know are just ridiculously, historically bad at getting rebounds and limiting other teams from getting offensive rebounds. So it's really impressively awful for the Suns that they're all the way down there with the Wizards in terms of limiting second chance points to their opponents. The thing is the Jazz, I would love to take a high number on a Jazz team that's undervalued all of the time and actually has the best record against the spread at home on the season, not away from home, because away from home they are absolutely awful. And so that's why it's tough to just go ahead and back them when their road defensive rating is third worst in the league. Only 2 teams play worse defense on the road than them. And the Suns' home offensive rating is 9th in the league. The road net rating for this team is 26th overall. The home net rating for the Suns 16th, which is surprisingly bad. You'd think the Suns would have a better home net rating, but they don't. It's just middle of the pack. Either way, way better than this Jazz team. So my leans for this game that I would look at, they're more in the player props realm here. And what I'm looking at is the way that I don't think Utah is going to be able to dominate down low the way that they normally do in this one. I think Nurk and company are going to have a lot more success the way that they've been so good getting rebounds all season, right? So Nurk, though, I would be looking at here because I think Nurk is going to be someone that would be really necessary against this Jazz team who's monstrous and, like I said, loves to attack down low and play down in the paint. If Nurk's not in there, this team is very thin with like Keita Bates-Diop as the next sort of tallest dude coming off the bench for them. That would be a problem, obviously, right? And Jock Landale actually might not be hurt anymore, so that'd be helpful. You might actually see more of him, but his minutes have been super limited, so I don't want to bank on him being out there to like stop, this Jazz front line. You need Nurk out there. It's just these props are high. It's like the books know what I know and what we're all talking about here, which is that if Nurk needs to play 28 to 32 minutes, you can't put his props at like 9.5 boards and like 10.5, 11.5, 12.5 points. Like you got to keep it at 14.5. And he hasn't been going over this number very much. So, the sportsbooks love to take a guy who's been hot as of late and just boost his props all the way up because they know that people are just looking at recent stats and just going, oh, he's done it recently, so I guess he'll do it tonight. And so the thing with Nurk is he hasn't even been doing this though, right? He hasn't been going over these numbers, yet somehow we have really high props for him. Clearly that's saying the books know that this is a game he needs to play in and should see a lot of minutes for Frank Vogel and the Suns. I also would like to lean under for a guy like John Collins, but his 6.5 boards is way too low. He's a guy I've been targeting with overs because he's been playing so much and he's been getting 17 rebound chances per game over his last 10 games. But I can't in good conscience and I want to fade him now because now I thought his prop would be up at about 8.5 against a Suns team that's really good at rebounding. But I couldn't get that angle either because clearly the books are on the fact that the Suns are very good at rebounding. And so John Collins is under 6.5 rebounds is a play I'd love to make, but it's too low. I might even consider it at under 7.5, and under 8.5 is what I thought I might get, and I would get great value. Didn't get it. It's at 6.5. We'll see what it looks like in the morning. And the last thing here is Walker Kessler, who doesn't have props up. If he did, I would probably lean an under for him as well. Or I would even consider an over if it's too low. 4.5, I would play over that. Once it gets up to 6.5, now I'm talking about maybe playing an under because once again, Suns are very good at rebounding. I don't think they're going to miss very many shots against the third worst defense in the league. That's the other thing about all these boards is there ain't going to be any boards for this Utah team with the way that they play defense. So I would love to find some unders for the rebounds on these Jazz players, but the rebounds are too low for John Collins, and I don't have Walker Kessler's out yet. So that is all the time I have for you, though, on this one. Make sure to subscribe to that page if you would. Continue to follow along because I am going to be bringing you 3 p.m. Eastern video like I do every day with the actual picks I'm making. We are looking really good. I'll show you guys that record here in that video tomorrow, but just know that we are currently up 35 units on player props this season. And I also shorted myself. It's 36.4 units that I'm looking at right here that we are up. So feeling super good about that. We're going to keep it going tomorrow with some more bets. I've already got 2 out here for you that I showed you on the sides. If you just want to stick with the player props and follow those, I get that. That's the bread and butter and where I've been most successful. But enjoy. Best of luck until I talk to you tomorrow. And until then, happy betting.